What's a good psychological trick that you use with success most of the times? When I'm super stressed about an upcoming event, usually a medical appointment or some social event, I pretend it's a week or a month after the event and that the event wasn't that bad at all. It helps me to get over the anxiety leading up to the days, hours, and minutes leading up to the event. In my mind, I know the event isn't that big of a deal, but anxiety always messes things up. So thinking beyond the event is the game changer for me. One of the best ways for cementing your knowledge of something is to teach it to someone else. If my kids are giving me a hard time about eating something, I tell them it's okay, they're probably not big enough yet. Then they eat it to prove me wrong. Tell someone, if I can make your hand flip over without touching it, will you buy me? Insert whatever, then ask them to put their hand out, and when they do, say, no, the other way. Quote. In an argument, find something to agree on, then push your main point. I have had great success using this method and it always works. I am an occupational therapist with early intervention, which means I do home therapy with the 0 to 3 age group. Sometimes they are preemies or micro-preemies, sometimes they have autism, sometimes language delays, sometimes genetic disorders. Whatever the diagnosis is, it often leaves moms feeling isolated, overwhelmed and incompetent. Whenever I am doing therapy, I will subtly orient the child so that the mom is on the direction that's easiest for the child to turn. And then I sing a song or play a game that I know will make the child really happy, and, right when they laugh or smile, I will say, look, she's looking for you, look at how much she loves you. I can really see how much she loves you, Mom. It always reinforces the parent-child bond, which almost always leads to a positive feedback loop of smiles and love from mom to child, which hopefully makes mom feel a little more secure and at ease. Reflective listening, simply being there with someone and reflecting their words and sentiments back to them. When someone shares a problem or grief or complaint with us, we often have the instinct to say, I'm sorry, as in, I'm sorry for the loss of your mother. What is the natural reaction when someone says sorry? Usually to say, that's okay. But it is not okay. Don't put someone in the position of comforting you for their loss. Instead, show that you see and feel their grief. That's so awful. I can't imagine how upset you must be. This invites the other person to tell you more. Impose optimism, things will get better. Yeah, maybe, but right now the person is upset and needs you to hear and validate that feeling. You can show you understand by saying, that sounds really tough. Even, dude, that really sucks, shows empathy without trying to push them to stifle their feelings or suck it up when they're just trying to be heard. Relate to the other person. Friend, I got a fluffing parking ticket, man. You, that's the worst. I got a parking ticket yesterday too, man. This may be appropriate later in the conversation, but it shouldn't be your first reaction to make it about you. Stay with them. Oh no, what happened? Invites them to tell you more. If a complaint, be defensive or apologize immediately. Acknowledgement is important. I really fluffed up. That was an error on my part. Or if you feel you didn't do anything wrong, at least, I can see why you're upset with the situation. In each of these situations, you can use reflective listening to show that you hear the other person and you're with them in their feelings. You're validating their anger, grief, and allowing them the safety of being in it with you before moving on. I use this with kids all the time. Instead of, you're okay. Pet peeve, we can help kids label and understand their feelings by saying, I see you're really upset right now. This gives them the vocabulary to express themselves rather than resorting to undesirable behaviors like hitting. Edit, thank you sincerely for the gold and positive feedback. I'm going to be teaching this next week in one of my classes, minus the F-bombs, so it was really helpful for me to practice explaining it and see that it resonated with a lot of people. I work with kids, so I really use social referencing to my advantage. If a kid falls, they look around to adults to see how the adult reacts. If the adult rushed over and starts coddling, the child will usually overreact because they think it's needed. If the adult doesn't seem concerned, the child is quicker to move on. Also, when I was younger, my mom would use a trick on me. She told me that she knew when I was lying because my tongue would turn green. She'd ask me a question, listen to the answer, then ask me to stick out my tongue. If I tried to hide it, she knew I was lying. Whenever I get upset and realize that I'm spiraling, I start listing things out loud that I'm grateful for. It's very hard to be anxious, depressed, scared when you're thinking about what's gone right for you. Once you get the hang of it, it's easy to make it into a long process to give yourself more positivity time. I'm grateful to have a functioning car. Well, what else about my car am I grateful for? All the awesome CDs I have, my car stereo, songs I like on the radio, hey, you know, gas prices have been lower lately. Well, how do I afford my car? A job I like, a wage I can survive on, coworkers I love, a boss that treats me well. Or maybe I'm grateful for friends and the places we hang out or the scenery in my area of the state. I can list gratitudes for an hour or more if I need to. It really does the trick, and it gets easier the more I do it. When you need something from someone, explicitly say, "I need your help," before making your request. Most people like to be needed and feel fulfilled when they've helped someone. When I'm nervous, I convince myself it's excitement. The heart racing, the racing thoughts, the alertness, I tell myself it's all energy pumping myself up to confront a challenge. The lesser of two evils. Working as a manager, part of my job is to keep people busy. Some people do not respond well with being told what to do. Offering two tasks, the one I want the employee to be doing against an equally feasible yet less desirable task, often will send the employee into a productive and happily grateful mode of doing said task. Then I take on the less than desirable one I was planning on doing anyways with good spirit, leaving a positive example on both myself and said task. No experience here, but I can't imagine why this wouldn't work well on children. Acting confident to convince people you know what you are doing. My therapist gave me the great advice that the word should is terrible for motivation, procrastination. I'm re-saying it far less eloquently, but basically instead of saying you should do the dishes, you should say I will do the dishes, which tricks your brain into doing it. Because should is far less matter of fact, meanwhile I will is very set in stone. It took me a while to do it, but now I barely ever say I should do X, Y, Z. And actually my motivation has gone up. Cunningham's law. Say something slightly wrong, and you'll almost always find someone desperate to correct you and do the work for you. Works great on Reddit when you get the source? Squawks. Just after you see someone check the time, ask them what time it is. They will check again. I have too. Ask people to do small favors for you, they'll tend to like you more this way. Benjamin Franklin effect. When arguing verbally, repeat your opponent's position and ask, "Is this what you mean?" or something similar. Firstly, this makes you understand their point better, but if it's bullgarbage, it also makes them realize it faster. Steelmanning. It's the opposite of strawmanning. When arguing, if you know you're right, then paraphrase the strongest, most ideal and robust possible version of your opponent's argument, and then argue against that. This builds trust and shows that you really do understand, see their perspective and aren't trying to downplay their ideas. It's disarming, and people tend to agree more when they feel like their opinions have been understood. Mirroring people. Not just in their body movements, but also in their time, language. I only do this if I'm trying to connect with someone, and it seems to work really well. Starting phone calls with, "Did I catch you at a bad time?" Learned this trick from Never Split the Difference. The author is a former FBI hostage negotiator. Most people start conversations with, "Hey, do you have a minute to talk?" which makes people defensive. For what reason? Why with you? Talk about what? Etc. Closing parenthesis. Getting people to say no is a key factor that allows them to open up by saying, "No, of course not, I'm not doing much anyways." Definitely helps when calling, especially when negotiating or work is involved. If you want people to like you, in a friendship way, this won't trick people into love. Ask them to do you a quick and easy favor. Most people will say yes to something simple, and help you out, then their brain justifies why they helped you out with, "I guess I like him." It works surprisingly well. If you work for a micromanager, don't ask them for their opinion or tell them too much. Do the task and do it well and let them know you've taken care of it. If you feel a panic attack coming on, embrace it. Tell yourself it's happening and welcome it. More often than not, the panic attack will subside. The way they work is through fear of having a panic attack. For example, "I'm going to embarrass myself, people will look at me," etc. If you take away that fear and allow it to come, it will go away. When someone has the hiccups, telling them to prove it to make the hiccups go away. We like to think we act because of how we feel, but in reality this is often reversed. We often feel things because of how we act. The truth is, we kind of suck at interpreting why we do things and can confuse cause and effect pretty easily. Did you help someone because you like them, or do you like them because you helped them out? Is your heart racing on a date because you're really into the person, or because the date itself is something exciting? If you know this, you can deal with other people better, not just getting them to like you by being in the right situations, but also simply being aware that you shouldn't take negative things personally. If someone is having a really garbage tea day, don't get too upset with them if they lash out. Also, the book How to Win Friends and Influence People has some pretty good advice that will either seem painfully obvious to you or completely groundbreaking, depending on how you currently interact with people.